Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world and whatever time you're listening to this podcast. It's Rachael here at Walk the Talk Live, and welcome to episode number 19 of the Walk the Talk podcast. I think it's episode 19. I'm absolutely terrible at remembering these things, but yeah, let's call it 19. I'm looking forward to getting into this episode because I think you are going to love this topic, so let's get right in about it. Okay, so I'm super excited about this episode because I'm speaking to someone about a topic that is very, very popular. And it's, I get asked questions about this subject all the time. So I am speaking to Sally Baker, who is a therapist, writer, and speaker on the subject of overcoming emotional eating. Now, this is something I have been wanting to talk about on the podcast forever. I just wanted to speak to the right person, and I think I found her. So without any further ado from me, because I can ramble on for ages, as you know, I'm going to get straight into the interview, and then I'll catch you at the end. So I hope you enjoy this. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a cup of nice coffee, chill out, and enjoy the interview. Okay, so I have with me today on the podcast Sally Baker, who is a therapist, writer and speaker, specialising in the subject of overcoming emotional eating. So hi Sally, thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast. How are you?
Hi there, Rachel. Fine, thank you, fine. Very good.
Good. So we're going to talk about a bit of a touchy subject today on the podcast, and it's something that I've wanted to cover for quite a long time because it comes up every single day for both my clients and people that are in, on social media, and that's emotional eating and food addiction. And thankfully, Sally got in touch with me via Twitter and said that she'd be happy to talk about the subject. So tell me a little bit about what it is that you do, Sally. What do you do for work, and how did you get involved in helping people overcome emotional eating?
Okay, I've been a therapist now for coming up 20 years, and my specialism is working with clients who really struggle with losing weight and staying at their goal weight. So I work with people who yo-yo diet and have yo-yo dieted for decades. When people come to a therapist to sort out their weight loss concerns, they already know that their relationship with food is their core problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, they haven't gone to Weight Watchers or Slimmers World. This is about what's happening in their mind more than what's happening in their bellies. Mm-hmm. So a therapeutic approach to weight loss means that we very gently unfurl all of those layers and explore what's been happening with them with food and when it began.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the root of, emotional eating is for most people quite deep, going back years and years and years, or do you think it's, I know this is quite a broad question, but I take it's not something that can be fixed overnight?
Well, because I don't work with a conscious mind, mm-hmm. I'm not a CBT therapist, so CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, for instance, is what the NHS in the UK rolls out to people, and food, which works fantastically with Class A drugs and things and alcohol that you can stay away from forevermore. And the whole idea of success is cessation of that behaviour. But with food, everyone needs to achieve a comfortable relationship with food so that they can thrive. So it's a very complex condition, and it does have lots of layers. But because I work with the subconscious mind, in a period of around 6 weeks of weekly sessions, everything can be sorted. It can be resolved. You can let go of those old patterns of behaviour, that old set of limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviour as well. Mm-hmm. So it can get sorted. And then you can see the incremental weight losses, and because when people come to me, they want to lose weight now for the last time. This is not about a sprint. This is about getting to their goal weight in a really healthy way by eating real food, by upping their personal care and taking care of themselves. Sometimes my clients have never taken care of themselves before, so it feels like a real radical departure. And we have to do it a bit at a time, really, within that 6 weeks.
That's very much the way that I work with my clients as well, is to try and slow them down a little bit and, get them out of this race that they are always in when it comes to losing weight, because
absolutely,
it definitely doesn't work.
It takes 21 days to embed a habit. So if you want to do something and want to have it as part of your life, commit to doing it for 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
And really focus on that first 21 days and then see where you are after 21. Because after 21 days or 21 repetitions, it becomes habitual. It's much easier to have adopted something if you give yourself 21 days to begin with.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. What would you say is the definition of emotional eating? How would someone recognise that is what they're doing?
I think when they're experts, when they know the calorie load of every conceivable food stuff, mm-hmm. when they've got to goal weight several times and something has happened to knock them off the well-being wagon and back to disordered eating, it's when a lot of the time with my clients, they come to me and say, I don't know why I eat like this. I don't even recognise what my eating patterns are. I don't even know when I'm hungry, and I really don't recognise when I'm full. So one of the first things we do for perhaps the first week is a food and mood diary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you just write down what you eat. You write down what you eat, but you also make a note of how hungry you were when you were triggered to eat. So if you're eating at 0 hunger or ravenously hungry at a 10, so we plot that. And we also plot the mood that you felt when you were triggered to eat. So if you'd had a row with someone at home or felt really pressured at work or were incredibly bored or lonely, write those things down. So start to make the connections, because a lot of eating and emotional eating happens in a zoned out way. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if how they describe their eating patterns is if they're abducted by aliens and stuff is done to them, mm-hmm. which we know isn't true. But it means shining a light under something that's been below their radar. So the first step is always, let's start exploring. Let's start making some insights. And then from those insights, you can start doing the work. If you say, oh God, every Friday when I'm on my own, I binge eat. Or every Monday or every Sunday night when I know I'm going back to work, my eating's out of control. All of that kind of stuff. Start finding what's going on for you. Because the act of eating, the act of swallowing down food, masks those emotions mm-hmm. quite effectively. It's as a strategy to hide uncomfortable emotions. It works, but you pay a high price for it because you tend to eat garbage food and you tend to carry way more weight than you're happy to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, the vast majority of the population now are aware of, what they actually need to do in order to lose weight. It's very, I explain it to people as it's not easy, but it is very simple. Like the actual principles of how to lose weight are very, very simple. But, the things that people come up against seem to be the inability to sort of suppress this desire to replace an emotion or satisfy an urge with something like food, rather than maybe something that would be more would create more of a positive energy rather than a negative energy when it comes to gaining weight.
I think there's a huge amount of overwhelm out there where people feel completely overwhelmed and unable to even begin to kind of think, okay, I'll improve my breakfast or I'll relook at my lunches. They just feel completely overwhelmed, which is why the kind of addiction theory around food is becoming more prevalent and more. I see it more often, clients coming to me and say, I'm completely addicted to sugar, for instance. Mm-hmm. Whereas part of my work is bearing witness and listening, but at the back of my mind I'm thinking of modern day theories around addiction mm-hmm. that are in books by Johann Hari, Chasing the Scream, or Russell Brand's Recovery. In Russell Brand's book he said drugs and alcohol are not my problem, reality is my problem. So when people tell me that they are addicted to food, I can let that stand. They can come in and say they're addicted to food, but we're going to unpick it. We're going to gently unpick it. And Johann Hari said, if you are alone, you are vulnerable to addiction. And I think if you're connected and happy and fulfilled in your life, if you're really at the top end of the kind of emotional scale of joy, appreciation, feeling empowered, and have self-actualization in your life, you are not likely to be vulnerable to addiction. But if you are feeling grief, depression, despair, and powerlessness, you are going to be really vulnerable to addiction. So we go in and look at where they're feeling the depression and the despair and the powerlessness.
And it's very difficult to actually sort of surrender yourself to be open to discuss these kind of things, because it's not an easy thing to actually have to go to actually open up and speak about. Do you think that might be where most of the problem lies with obesity and the obesity epidemic that we have, and people being overweight and unfit and these kind of things? Do you think maybe a portion of that is to do with either shame or...
A lot to do around shame. There's a lot to do around fat shaming. Mm-hmm. And also I work a lot with clients who have type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So that's often linked to lifestyle and obesity. But they feel an inordinate amount of shame and embarrassment because they feel blame that they brought this on themselves. And it's a bit punitive. The way it's sort of treated, there is an element of kind of, well, you brought this on, you haven't taken care of yourself. You haven't eaten well, you haven't monitored what you've been doing. But there are real reasons why people don't appear on their own to-do list. There are real serious, embedded reasons why people don't count in their own lives. Yeah. And they go back, as you said before, a really, really long time.
Yeah.
So we can go back to when triggers happened when clients were 2 or 3 years old. We don't need to go back in great detail. I mean, sometimes clients don't want to talk about what happened to them when they were 2 years old, if something really traumatic happened to them. And we name it as, come up with something you want to call it instead of having to go into all the detail and reliving it again. I don't want to re-traumatize clients. So sometimes clients call it the Wednesday thing, or the blue thing, or the blue dress thing. So they know what it means. They know innately what it means. They know in every detail what the blue dress means to them. And we can work on resolving and releasing all of the negative emotions attached to the blue dress. So they'll have a memory about the blue dress, but they won't be triggered by it anymore.
Okay.
And I've got the tools to do that, and that can happen pretty quickly, and they can feel lighter and better in themselves. When you're feeling empowered in yourself, then you can do all the things you already know that you need to do to lose weight, get fitter, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But you can't do that when you're on the floor.
No, exactly. Something that you said before a couple of minutes ago just really resonated with me, and it's something that I hear from clients a lot, similarly to yourself, and that I have people coming to me saying that they are addicted to food or addicted to sugar. They just can't seem to stop these binges or thoughts around food or just urgent reactions to certain foods. Do you think there is such a thing as food addiction, being addicted to sugar?
Well, the science and the way that sugar plays on the reward part of the brain, but it's not a physiological and emotional addiction like heroin is. It isn't. It doesn't manifest in the same way. And the reward centers in the brain that light up when you eat sugar are the same ones when you listen to classical music, for instance. And we're not addicted to Mozart.
No.
But it really is those same sectors of the brain. But I think coming up with the idea about I'm addicted to sugar and I can't give it up, when you unpick that incrementally, who buys the sugar? How come it's in your house? Where are you sourcing it? All of those kind of dynamics. Oh, my partner's bringing it home for me. Or my husband always brings chocolate home. We look at the dynamic about who's feeding who here and who's the feeder in your household. Or if you're going out and buying, I have clients who buy their sugary cakes and food from 5 different stores because they don't want any one store owner to see how much they buy. Mm-hmm. So they're making quite circuitous journeys to buy cakes at this one, sugar and chocolate at this one, so that no one gets the full picture. Mm-hmm. And they're the only ones that know how much sugar they're eating. Mm. So I don't really think it's an addiction. I think it's a symptom of a massive amount of overwhelm and disempowerment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, feeling disempowered.
Definitely makes more sense and sort of congruent with what I think as well. So you said when it comes to emotional eating, you said that the first thing you would sort of suggest to a client would be to start keeping a food and mood diary, which I think is a brilliant idea. Yeah. How long do you think people need to keep these kind of diaries for? I'm just trying to, give people that are listening possibly sort of idea of where they can start.
I can send you a template of the food and mood diary so that people can print it out if you'd like.
Oh, that'd be great. Really good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. I'll link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to go and grab that, there'll be a link there. Hopefully when you're listening, I'll have the link and we can put it there and you can download it.
Great. It's a bit of a chore to fill in, to complete a food and mood diary, and we're looking for enough information, enough entries to make a connection. I'm always interested with clients about omission and commission, what you do and what you don't do, what you say and what you don't say. So I go for a week, and if clients are coming back after a week and saying, I've only managed to fill in one day, then, we need to look at what's been omitted, what's the problem about not doing it. So I'm not going to say you need to do it for 6 weeks in those dieting, slimming clubs, I think they're part of the weekly weigh-in thing that you do a food diary. But that's not what I want. So just do it for a week. Do it as honestly as you can. In fact, statistically, people do lie even to themselves on food diaries. So don't want to set anyone up to fail. But a week should give you enough insights to see what's going on with food. And some of the things to look out for is how long do you go before meal times? So that if you're going inordinately long gaps, so if you're eating dinner at 8 o'clock in the evening and the next day you're not eating until lunchtime, that's around 16, 17 hours of fasting, which means your blood sugar level is on the floor. So that's not great for you physiologically, but it also means that you can make poorer choices because you're ravishingly hungry by then. Or if you find that on your food and mood diary that after dinner you're going back into the kitchen and you're looking for treats and sweets and crisps, fatty foods and sweet foods, but you know that you're not hungry because you've seen that on your hunger to fullness part of the food and mood diary, then it's not about food, it's about searching for some sweetness at the end of your day that's lacking in your day, that's lacking perhaps in your life. So you can have aha moments from the food and mood diary in just a week. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Do you think when you start to make the connections, so you've got your food and mood diary in front of you, you're starting to look at it and you think, okay, I'm starting to make connections here. I can start to see, that I'm eating when I'm already full, or I'm eating when I'm not hungry, and I'm doing this at this particular time. What is the next step after that?
I don't think you can do it front brain. I don't think you can kind of power through on, I'm now going to no longer, just like a willpower thing. I think the emotional drivers are incredibly strong, and this has been a strategy for survival in a way. Having something sweet after dinner because you're actually emotionally lonely. Even when you're in a relationship, you can be incredibly lonely. So it doesn't mean it's just people living on their own. It means you've got to do some therapeutic interventions. So I use 3 main tools. One is called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. There's a lot of free resources online around emotional freedom technique. It looks like weird hippie tapping thing, but it's about 25. Do you know it, Rachel?
I've heard of it. I haven't actually practiced it.
Well, I'm an advanced practitioner of EFT, and I really think it's great for kind of making those connections, those aha moments, and managing to release some of the power that are in those triggers. So there's a lot online that's free, and emotional freedom technique's been around for about 25 years, and it was developed in the States, where so many of these therapies come from. But they've used it to great effect with returning military personnel from war zones to sort out post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've had remarkable results. And there's more and more clinical results being posted now from research. So it is holding up scientifically. It's not just hippie woo-woo. So there's EFT, and I use an English modality, which you can get part of that for free, and I'm happy to send a link to that as well, so you can mess around and play with that. It's called percussive suggestion technique. It's created in the UK, and I can send a link to that, and that's completely free. And people do a lot of their own clearing work about bad memories and negative beliefs with PS Tech, and that's very quick. And then hypnosis. So hypnosis supports positive change, but I don't believe you can just go in and do hypnosis on people until they've cleared out their garbage. And when the garbage has been cleared out with EFT and PS Tech, then hypnosis works wonderfully just to put in place changes in how you think and feel about yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the basic toolkit.
That sounds like something I'd love to sort of open up for, clients of mine and possibly people that go through my courses and things, because it's definitely something that, I don't know if I'm making a very blanket statement here, but I'd be pushed to find someone out there who hasn't, struggled with some form of emotionally connected eating before. Because the world that we live in nowadays, sort of almost even things like social media, even marketing, even TV adverts, commercials, when you're walking down the street, adverts for foods, it's all targeted towards emotions. Like I was walking down the street the other day, just around about dinner time, and there was like one of these sandwich boards outside of a pub, and all it said was "hard day, come in and have a cold one" or something like that. And I was and I just look at that thinking, God, like that's a subtle message that says you've had a rubbish day, you deserve to have this. And it's almost more socially acceptable to act like that than it is to not act like that. So I think it is like quite a big problem these days.
It's a massive problem where food, for instance, and alcohol, but with food is used to commiserate and to celebrate. So it's both ends of the scale. So when you're feeling really down and really unhappy, you use food to commiserate and cheer yourself up. And when you're really happy, food's always there as a celebration, part of the celebration. But it's about raising the bar so that your life now you're not rewarding yourself in your life with some kind of chocolate bar or a party bag of crisps. Raising the bar so that you deserve more. Yeah. It's very much linked with a sense of self-deserving. And if you don't feel that you deserve very much, then you will settle. You will settle low, and you'll settle with just sweet stuffs. And it'll get you through, but it'll get you through, as we said before, at great personal cost.
Yeah, definitely.
There
was something else I was going to ask you. Oh, yeah. I think one of the main things I wanted to get across and sort of get clarification from yourself as well here is that a lot of people, a lot of clients have come to me with this problem. I'm addicted to sugar. I don't know why I can't stop doing this. I don't know why I can't stop eating this. And they almost feel like they're very, very alone, and that it's only them that does it. Nobody else in the world suffers from this. And they feel very, even actually, admitting it out loud is a difficult thing to do, but it's so common, and someone round the corner from you is feeling exactly the same way, but nobody talks about it. And I think that's a really, really big problem, because you see that big diet companies, slimming clubs, these kind of things, this is how it's done. And then you see behind closed doors, and a lot of the time, actually, for me, it's social media, and particularly Instagram, that I see a lot of posts being made about, I've messed up today, I've just eaten this, or I'm such a sinner, or I'm this, or I'm that, I can't do this, and I'm almost beating themselves into like a pulp, like you disgrace, like I've disgusted myself, and like they're the only person on earth that's suffering from this, and actually it's such a common thing, and that's what I wanted to sort of get across. And I think you'll agree with me with the, that's the type of, you're working with clients all the time with this, and it's not something that you should be ashamed about.
No, but there's a huge amount of shame around it. So I often have clients and they say, I've not told anyone that I'm here, or no one knows I'm doing this work with you. And I'm thinking, and I say to them, well, I won't be waiting for recommendations then, will I? Because no one knows they're coming.
I get the same. Like the number of people, I get exactly the same. I work with mostly women, 99%, and see the number of women that I work with on a one-to-one basis is that tell me, listen, I haven't told anyone, I haven't even told my husband that I'm working with you.
Sure, exactly. I have exactly the same. Husbands, partners, all of it. No one knows that they're coming. Mm-hmm. And then they have no intention of telling anyone. And the secret and the shame side of it is all about, that negative self-talk that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So with people who overthink about food, or who are emotional eaters in effect, have an inner voice that is incredibly critical of them. We all have an inner voice that speaks to us. And when I say that to clients and they look kind of askance and they say, really? And I say, well, your inner voice is the one that says to you, really, I don't have one. That's your inner voice. But with emotional eaters, it's a negative voice of the most judgmental and critical type imaginable. You say things to yourself that in your head that you would never allow anyone else in the whole world to say to you. And along with the food and mood diary and making those connections, I also do this thing where we start to explore how the percentage of negative self-talk versus self-affirming self-talk. Mm-hmm. So I do it with this glass fish tank with blue marbles and gold marbles. And I asked my clients to imagine, I sent the fish tank out to them a week previously, and they brought it into the session that day. And there's 100 marbles in the fish tank that represents their brain. And I asked them to take an intuitive guess off the top of their head what percentage of negative thoughts they've had about themselves during the last week, and the percentage of gold positive thoughts they've had about themselves. And they say things like, whoa, they think about it for a moment or two, and they say things like 70% blue thoughts, negative thoughts, versus 30% gold positive thoughts, or sometimes as high as 98% negative blue thoughts versus 2% positive golden thoughts.
Wow.
And that's exhausting. And that voice is often happening just below conscious awareness. So it just goes on like a constant toxic drip feed during their waking hours. Mm-hmm. So a bit like the food and mood diary, where we're shining a light with self-talk, the negative self-talk, we're shining a light so that you can begin to interrupt the self-talk. Mm-hmm. and notice it when it comes in to your head, instead of just letting it wash over your brain, all that daily negativity about how bad you are and how you'll never, achieve anything, all that stuff, all that negative stuff. Start interrupting it. Mm-hmm. and dismissing it. And also, interestingly, start noticing if it comes in an accent, or it uses slang words, or it reminds you of someone from your past, a parent, a teacher, a grandparent, someone who had power over you when you were smaller and not so powerful. And then that's a relationship to unpick for future work. Mm-hmm. So the negative self-talk is really important to sort out.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that this is not something that you can just overcome by saying, okay, I know that I'm emotionally eating, I'm going to overcome it today. It requires much more work than that. And it also, if you're listening to this and you can resonate with this, and I think you will be able to, because I certainly can, and you are worried about never being able to overcome this, I think it's safe to say that simply, changing the way that you eat is not enough. You need to address the underlying thoughts and the underlying cause, and the only way to do that is to possibly, see someone like yourself, Sally, or speak to someone that is, speak to someone, speak to a professional about it, because it's not something that you should be embarrassed about. And
I'd like to emphasise that also treat yourself with great kindness, because often when we're all born clear, we're just clear, nothing happened to us, we're just born. And some of these things that we've developed, some of these habits that really don't serve us too well, we formulated at times in our life when that was all we could do. Mm-hmm. So we have only ever done the best we could do. Sometimes our best was pretty rubbish, but realistically and empathetically, it was the best we could do at that time. So I always want my clients to treat themselves with immense kindness, because they've had sometimes the hardest of times, and no one knows how hard it's been except themselves. Mm-hmm. And they've come through some really difficult times. And maybe they've had a strategy that the way to survive that was by swallowing down those emotions, those really difficult emotions, with food. And it's got them through. They're here today. And it's time to be able to resolve and let go of some of those practices that they don't need anymore. But you've really got to treat yourself with kindness.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Yeah. Because if you continue to treat yourself with negativity and, beating yourself up for this, it's, recovery from it is not, that's not going in the right direction. So...
It's true.
Yeah. So speaking about on the subject of, perhaps investigating this further, if anyone does want to maybe get in touch with you or find out more about what you do and how you can help them, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can email. My email address is sally@workingonthebody.com. So it's full words all joined up, sally@workingonthebody.com. Mm-hmm. I also have an online course now called Overcoming Emotional Eating. Okay. And my book, 7 Simple Steps to Stop Emotional Eating. So there's different ways to come in, and the links, Rachel's going to put up the links underneath this podcast.
I will. So if you are currently listening on iTunes podcast app, you'll be able to just tap the image right now and you will be able to get access to all the links that Sally has just spoken about there. If it's something that you want to investigate a bit further, find out a bit more about, then just click that link and you can get in touch with Sally that way.
Right.
And I'd just like to say thank you very much again for speaking to me today. It's quite a broad topic, and I'm sure we could go for hours and hours. But we'll stop there and maybe save the rest for another time. But thank you so much for your time.
Very welcome. I've really enjoyed it, and it's a privilege. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Sally there for that interview. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I did. I think I've learned a lot from that one, and I hope you have too. So if emotional eating is something that you struggle with and you feel like it's holding you back from achieving the goals that you have, then the first port of call that I would suggest you make with Walk the Talk Life is to join my Transform 21 programme, which will help you step by step to change your habits in a very, very small and incremental way that will help improve your confidence, reduce the chances of emotional eating, and also educate you on nutrition along the way. So we have a new group starting on Thursday the 8th of February 2018, if you're listening to this on the day that it's being released. It's just over a week away. So yeah, we're starting on the 8th of February and I'd love for you to join me. Just go to www.transform21.co.uk. That's the numbers transform21, so transform21.co.uk. You can find out more about the programme there and also hear from people that have gone through it before as well. So we've got lots of exciting stuff coming up with Walk the Talk Life, relaunching my new website in the very, very near future. I currently have a giveaway going on Facebook and Instagram for 3 months of free nutrition coaching with me on a one-to-one basis. So that's really exciting. Just pop over onto my Facebook page, Walk the Talk Life, and you can enter that giveaway there. Also on Instagram, same handle, at Walk the Talk Life. You'll scroll down and you'll see the post, and you can find out what it is that you need to do in order to apply to win that prize. So yeah, loads going on. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. As always, please leave me feedback on iTunes. You can now do this from the podcast app. So please, if you're listening to this, I would really, really appreciate it if you could just spend a couple of minutes leaving a review. It makes a big difference to the way that the podcast is advertised on iTunes, so appreciate it a lot. I will see you in the next episode. Take care of yourself, and I hope to speak to you soon.